The current Australian women's side are the greatest team in the history of cricket. No, not just the greatest team in the modern era or the greatest ever women's team, the greatest cricket team across time, space and gender. Not because they won the 2023 T20 World Cup, or the 2022 Commonwealth Games, or the 2022 50 Over World Cup, or the 2020 T20 World Cup, or the 2018 T20 World Cup. That's already 5 global tournaments in a row in 4 years and 3 months. The last 3 of those wins came in the space of 1 year. 5 big trophies, which is as many as some teams have won in their entire history. England have won 5 global tournaments in the women's game, 4 ODI World Cups, and 1 T20 World Cup. New Zealand, an ODI World Cup in 2000. West Indies won T20 World Cup in 2016. Australia have won 5 in less than 4 years if we remove the pandemic months. We're not even going into ancient history, not even 20 years or even 10. But that's just global tournaments. These are big prizes and you're challenged by a different team every day, but they are not what makes up the calendar. How have Australia done in bilateral series? The last time they lost a bilateral T20I series was all the way back in 2017. Since then, they have played 14 T20I series, they've won 13 of them and drawn just 1. This includes 11 bilateral series and 3 triangular tournaments. The T20I defeat in 2017 came against England, but the multi-format Ashes of that Australian summer ended in a draw. In this period, Australia have won 57 T20Is, they've tied 2 and lost only 9. Which is a win-loss ratio of 6.33. Their average run rate has been 8.02 runs and over. Their opponents have scored at 6.51 runs per over. So that's a difference of 1.51 runs per over. In a T20 match, that is a 30-run margin, which is huge. Since March the 30th, 2021, they have not lost a single T20I. That is nearly 2 years, except one that went into a super over. Since March 23rd, 2018, they have lost only 6 games in 5 years. But that's just one format. In ODIs, Australia last lost a series outside ICC trophies all the way back in January 2014. It's been almost a decade since Australia women have lost a bilateral series, even one. They've won 22 consecutive bilateral series in this period. Australia have had 5 prime ministers since they last lost a bilateral ODI series. They've won 75 ODIs and lost just 9, a win-loss ratio of 8.33. They have scored at 5.35 runs and over during this period and conceded at just 4.32. That is a difference of 1.03 runs per over. In a 50 over match, that amounts to a margin of 51 runs. That has been the average margin of victory. Australia lost to India in the 2017 World Cup semi-final. After that defeat, they made a vow. We've changed the way we approach and play our cricket and are a lot more positive and willing to take a few more risks. And I think that suited our game style, said Meg Lanning. 3 matches later, they lost to England in an ODI in Coffs Harbour. But after that, they went on a run of 22 ODI wins in a row, a world record streak across formats and genders. They finally lost to India in a very tight match in 2021 by 2 wickets with 3 balls to spare. Since then, they've started another streak. They have now won 15 ODIs in a row. That makes it 37 wins in their last 38 matches. Now, Australia have had other amazing runs in the past. Between 1997, 98 and 1999, 2000, they won 33 ODIs and just lost 2. But the current streak has pushed even that into the background. Australia women have eliminated the law of averages from international cricket. They are an incredible side, but are they the greatest side in the history of cricket? Now, the England men's team were an excellent side between 1884 and 1896, where they won 13 out of a possible 14 series. Even if you ignore the 3 series against a weak South Africa series, that's still 10 series wins out of 11. Australia had an excellent team immediately after the First World War. They beat England 5-0 at home and 3-0 in England in the span of a few months. Warwick Armstrong's Australians finished the summer of 1921 without losing a single test match or a game against a county side. County opposition wasn't easy for touring teams back then. Only one team toured England every summer and most counties got a game against them. So both the touring side and the county picked their best sides. After the Second World War, Australia won 4-0 in England. Don Bradman's Australians didn't lose a single match in the summer of 1948, winning 25 and drawing 9. These were excellent streaks, but 2 things need to be mentioned. Australian cricket was not as affected by the World Wars as English cricket, and while the Australian teams were excellent, their success was largely against English sides. At that point, there were only 2 strong teams in the world. That is also true of the England team of the 1950s. Between 1950-51 and 1958-59, England had a run of 14 unbeaten series, 10 wins and 4 draws. The 1960s was the first decade when other teams rose to the challenge of England and Australia. West Indies in the first half of the decade under Frank Worrell, and then South Africa in the second half. India were not to that level yet, but a streak of a different sort was going on in India. Bombay won the Ranji Trophy 15 times in a row. Their run began in the 1950s and ended in the 1970s, and spanned the entirety of the 1960s. Domestic cricket is obviously a level below Test cricket, but a 15-season run was spectacular by any standards. When Bombay finally lost, it was on first innings lead. They did not lose a match outright for 2 decades. But let's return to international cricket. In the mid-1970s, the West Indies emerged as the first ever international side to maintain its supremacy over a sustained period of time. ODIs also became popular in this decade. The West Indies won the first 2 World Cups without losing a match. Between 1975-76 and 1994-1995, the West Indies lost only 2 Test series. One of them was when most of their cricketers had joined Kerry Packer in his World Series. Almost through the entire 1980s and halfway through the 1990s without losing a single Test series. They won 20 series out of 29 and drew 9 of them. They won 59 Tests and drew 15. A win-loss ratio of 3.95. They won 11 Test matches in a row in 1984. These 11 Tests were part of a longer streak of 27 unbeaten Test matches in a row against Australia, India and England between 1981-82 and 1984-85. This remains a world record. At the same time, they became an unbeatable force in ODIs as well. In the 1980s, they won 122 ODIs and lost 46, a ratio of 2.652. However, they did not win a single big trophy in that decade. Not the 1983 World Cup, or the 1985 Benson and Hedges World Championship of Cricket, or the 1987 World Cup, or the 1989 MRF World Series. The mighty West Indians of the 1980s never won more than 11 ODIs in a row. It is still a very long run, but it's not close to the best in history. They had an amazing run in both formats, but their winning streaks in ODIs were halted every now and then. And in the first half of 2003, Australia men won 21 ODIs in a row, including 11 during the 2003 World Cup. The Australians had 2 other streaks of 14 wins in a row, one in 2000 under Steve Waugh, and the other during the 2007 World Cup. Australia also won the 1999 World Cup. That too included a streak of 11 wins in a row. They also had 2 runs of 16 consecutive Test wins, one under the captaincy of Steve Waugh, the other under Ponting's captaincy. They are probably the only international men's team to have challenged West Indies in terms of sustained success. Australia's peak was not as long as the West Indies, but more matches were played in the 2000s. Even at their peak though, neither Australia nor West Indies ever went through a single calendar year without losing a single men's ODI, in which they played more than 3 matches. Australia women have now gone almost 2 years without losing a single ODI or T20I. West Indies men and Australia men had long unbeaten streaks in Test cricket. However, it is easier to maintain these runs in Test cricket rather than the shorter formats for 2 reasons. First, there are draws that contribute to unbeaten streaks, and the shorter the format, the higher the chances of an upset. A team outside the top 5 or 6 rarely beats the best sides. It is more common in ODIs and even more common in T20Is, which is why the Sialkot Stallions' run of 25 consecutive wins or 5 consecutive titles is so revered. Australia women have achieved that at international level. Women's Test cricket is very rare. They're only 4 days long, so they seldom produce a result. Of their last 6 Test matches, Australia women have won 1 and drawn 5. Since 1990, they have played 29 Tests. They've won 10 of those and lost just 3. No team has won more Test matches than they have lost over this period, with the exception of Sri Lanka and Ireland, who have played 1 each. We'll never know how dominant Australia women would have been in Test cricket had they been given a more regular set of fixtures, or even just 5-day Test matches. However, we can make an educated guess. Regardless though, they have to be considered as one of, if not the most, dominant sides in the history of the game, and given the profile of the current team, they could get even better.